Welcome to another thought-provoking video on my channel. Today, we're diving into some of the deepest questions about human nature. Starting with the most fundamental one, what is intelligence? This question forms the foundation of something much bigger, an idea that has the potential to change how we think about life, death, and what might come after. Stay with me as we unravel this concept. Let's start with the basics. What is intelligence? We often think of it as problem-solving, reasoning, or simply being smart. But intelligence is far more than that. It's the ability to learn from experiences, adapt to new situations, think critically, and apply knowledge. But at its core, intelligence is what allows us to process reality, understand the world around us, and reflect on our experiences. Philosophers have long debated what constitutes intelligence and thinking. From Aristotle to modern cognitive scientists, the mind has been the subject of deep inquiry. For me, the question is intelligence the defining element of who we are? And if so, can it be transferred? Take Aristotle, for instance. He saw intelligence as a combination of practical wisdom and rationality. Fast forward to the Enlightenment era, and philosophers like John Locke argued that the mind is a blank slate, shaped by experience. In Locke's view, intelligence isn't just innate, it's formed by the thoughts and memories we accumulate throughout life. But this leads us to a fascinating question: can all of this be transferred? If intelligence and thought define us, is there a way to take everything we know, our memories, our experiences, and place them into a new body? This is where things get interesting. Before we get into the details of my idea about rebirth through technology, let's explore what some of history's greatest philosophers have said about the mind, thoughts, memories, and emotions. These ideas form the foundation for understanding whether rebirth through technology is possible. René Descartes believed in what we now call dualism, the idea that the mind and body are two distinct substances. He famously said, "I think, therefore I am," suggesting that thinking and self-awareness are what define existence. For Descartes, even if the body changes, the mind could theoretically continue on its own. John Locke had a different take. He believed that personal identity is tied to memory. If you can recall past experiences, then you are the same person, regardless of physical changes. This is an important idea for mind uploading. If memories define who we are, then transferring those memories could mean transferring you. Kant believed that human intelligence lies in our ability to reason and understand the world through categories like time and space. But beyond just reasoning, Kant argued that our capacity for moral decision-making is part of what makes us human. So, can that moral compass, which guides our emotions and ethics, be transferred into another body? Kant would likely have said that reason, perhaps, but emotions are deeply tied to individual experience. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or Overman, might seem to align with the idea of rebirth through technology. He believed that humans could overcome their limitations and become something greater by pushing the boundaries of existence. If mind uploading becomes possible, could we become Nietzsche's Übermensch by living multiple lives and continuously evolving? David Hume had a rather radical view. He argued that the self is an illusion, there is no permanent me that continues unchanged over time. For Hume, we're just a bundle of perceptions. If he's right, mind uploading may not recreate a consistent person. Instead, the new being would be just a new bundle of perceptions, a new version rather than a true continuation. Freud introduced the idea that our conscious thoughts are only a small part of who we are. Beneath them lies a vast unconscious mind filled with desires, fears, and memories that we may not even be aware of. If we try to transfer our minds, how much of this unconscious part of ourselves would go with it? Freud would probably argue that it's not just the conscious memories that need to be transferred, it's everything deep inside us as well. Kierkegaard believed that the self is something we are always in the process of becoming. We are not static beings, but dynamic projects. For him, the process of living, struggling, and making choices is what shapes us. So, even if we could transfer our mind into a new body, the question remains, would that new version of you have the same existential struggles that helped form your identity? Heidegger saw human existence as fundamentally tied to our awareness of time and mortality. we are beings toward death, and the fact that we know we will die shapes our choices and our identity. If we remove death from the equation, by transferring our minds to new bodies, would we still be the same? Or does the inevitability of death play too central a role in who we are? Sartre argued that existence precedes essence. We are born without any preordained purpose, and it is our actions that define who we become. Rebirth through mind uploading challenges this idea. Would the new version of you still have the same freedom to define its own existence, or would it be locked into the essence you have already created? Lastly, Daniel Dennett offers a more modern view. He describes the self as a center of narrative gravity, a story we tell ourselves based on our memories and experiences. According to Dennett, the self is not a thing but an abstraction that holds our narrative together. If that narrative can be transferred, then perhaps the self can live on in a new form, continuing its story. At this point in my exploration, I wanted to get an outside perspective. So I asked the AI, what is intelligence? Its answer was surprisingly simple, yet profound. Intelligence is the ability to process information, learn from experience, and adapt to new environments. It involves reasoning, problem-solving, and understanding. But beyond that, intelligence is about making connections, linking past knowledge with current situations to make informed decisions. This simple explanation actually gets at the core of what I've been wondering. If intelligence is about adapting and processing, is there a way to transfer all of that knowledge into another being?
So now let's tackle the most fundamental question of all. What is the self? When we talk about transferring our minds, memories, and experiences into another body, we're really asking, can we transfer ourself? But to answer that, we first need to understand what the self truly is. This is one of the most debated topics in philosophy. For John Locke, personal identity is entirely tied to memory. If you can remember doing something, then you are the same person who did it. So, by this logic, if we could successfully transfer all of your memories into a new body, you would still be you. Modern philosopher Daniel Dennett takes it a step further. He argues that the self is a kind of narrative, a story we tell ourselves about our lives based on our memories and experiences. In Dennett's view, as long as the story stays intact, the self persists. This theory aligns well with the concept of mind uploading. If your narrative, the story of who you are, can be transferred intact, then the you that exists in the new body is still, at least in some way, you. Søren Kierkegaard believed that the self isn't a static thing, it's something we are always becoming. Life is full of choices, and it's those choices that shape who we are. According to Kierkegaard, we don't just exist, we are constantly creating our own selves. So, if we were to transfer a mind into a new body, the new self would continue to evolve, based on the experiences and choices that come next. On the more radical side of things, David Hume argued that the self is an illusion. He claimed there is no fixed self. Instead, we are just a bundle of perceptions and experiences. For Hume, there's no unifying thread that ties everything together. If this is true, then transferring your memories and thoughts to another body wouldn't make much of a difference, because there was never a solid you to begin with. Across major world religions, the concept of intelligence, thought, and emotions is deeply tied to spirituality and the human connection to the divine. While modern science places the seat of thought and emotions in the brain, many religious teachings offer a different understanding. Let's explore what some major religions say about intelligence and emotions. In Islam, there is a profound connection between thought, intelligence, and the heart. Interestingly, many references in the Quran and Hadith indicate that thinking and understanding are associated with the heart rather than the brain. For example, in the Quran it is said, "Do they not travel through the lands so that their hearts may thus learn wisdom?" Surah Al-Hajj 22:46. This verse suggests that the heart is not merely an organ of feeling, but one of understanding and reflection. In Islamic theology, the heart is seen as the seat of both emotional and intellectual reflection, and without proper spiritual alignment, the heart remains sealed and incapable of grasping the truth. Islamic scholars have interpreted these teachings to mean that the heart holds a deeper kind of wisdom, one that combines emotion, faith, and reason in a harmonious way. The Prophet Muhammad PBUH also emphasized the importance of contemplation, tafakkur, as an act of worship, often encouraging believers to ponder the world, life, and their relationship with God. Hadith example: the Prophet is reported to have said, "In the body, there is a piece of flesh which, if it is sound, the whole body is sound. If it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Truly, it is the heart." Sahih al-Bukhari. This points again to the centrality of the heart in understanding and wisdom. In Christianity, the heart and mind are often seen as intertwined. The Bible speaks of the heart as the center of emotion and thought, where decisions, beliefs, and reflections come from. For example, in the book of Proverbs, it is written, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Proverbs 23:7. Here, thought is also linked to the heart, much like in Islam. Christian teachings focus on the idea that true wisdom comes from an alignment of one's thoughts, emotions, and will with God. The heart is viewed as not only the emotional center, but also the guiding force for moral and intellectual actions. In Judaism, there is a strong emphasis on lev, heart, and nefesh, soul, both of which are integral to thought, emotion, and the experience of life. In the Hebrew Bible, the heart is referenced as the center of not just feeling, but also wisdom and decision-making. For instance, in Deuteronomy 6:5, it says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." The heart is repeatedly invoked as the organ that not only loves, but understands and chooses. Jewish thinkers, particularly in the mystical traditions, often refer to the unity of the heart and mind as crucial for spiritual growth. In Hinduism, the mind, manas, intellect, buddhi, and heart, hridaya, work together in the pursuit of enlightenment and liberation, moksha. Thought and reflection, chintana, are seen as essential parts of spiritual practice, and emotions are recognized as influential in shaping an individual's karma and path through life. The Bhagavad Gita, a central Hindu scripture, frequently speaks about the importance of controlling the mind and focusing one's thoughts and heart on divine truth. Krishna tells Arjuna, one must deliver oneself with the help of one's mind and not degrade oneself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and its enemy as well. Bhagavad Gita 6.5. Thus, in Hindu thought, the mind and heart both have roles in spiritual awakening and the pursuit of knowledge. In Buddhism, the mind is considered the source of both suffering and enlightenment. Buddha taught that the key to overcoming suffering lies in understanding the nature of the mind and controlling its impulses. The Dhammapada says, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." In this sense, thought and intelligence are central to the path of enlightenment. However, emotions, especially those born out of desire or attachment, are often seen as obstacles to spiritual liberation. Across religions, there is a common thread. Intelligence, thought, and emotions are deeply intertwined with the heart, soul, and moral compass. While modern science locates thinking in the brain, religious teachings often point to a deeper, more spiritual understanding of thought and reflection. In Islam and Christianity, the heart is central to both emotion and intellect, while in Hinduism and Buddhism, the mind's role in self-realization and spiritual progress is emphasized. In contrast to scientific thought that locates all cognition in the brain, religious traditions often invoke a balance between the heart and the mind, suggesting that wisdom and understanding come from a unity of intellect and spirit. This question touches upon one of the most fundamental philosophical and religious debates. What exactly is the soul? And how does it relate to our thoughts, intelligence, emotions, and memories? To answer this question, let's break down some of the key perspectives. Philosophers have long distinguished between the mind and the soul. The mind is often considered the seat of thought, intelligence, and memories. It's the part of us that processes information, solves problems, and stores experiences. The mind is closely related to the brain and its physical processes. The soul, on the other hand, is traditionally viewed as something more transcendent. According to ancient and modern philosophers alike, the soul represents the essence of a person, something beyond the physical body and mental faculties. Plato, for example, saw the soul as eternal and unchanging, separate from the body's functions. For him, the soul is what continues beyond physical death. In René Descartes' dualism, he separated the mind and the body, but left the soul somewhat distinct from both. The soul, in this view, is the spiritual essence, while the mind deals more directly with conscious thought. In this sense, the soul is not identical to thought, intelligence, or memories. It might encompass these things, but it is seen as more fundamental, the core of who a person is.
Religious perspective, the soul and the heart. In religious texts, particularly in Islam and Christianity, the soul is often associated with the heart. As you mentioned, in the Quran and many hadiths, the heart is frequently described as the seat of understanding, emotion, and spiritual reflection, rather than the brain. Islamic theology holds that the nafs, often translated as the soul or self, is the part of us responsible for our actions and intentions. The nafs include our desires, our struggles with morality, and our spiritual development. However, while the nafs interact with our thoughts and emotions, it's not seen as identical to them. The soul, in Islam, is something that transcends thought and physical brain processes. It is the core of our being and the part that faces God's judgment after death. In Christianity, the soul is also considered to be distinct from mere thoughts or emotions. St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas both argue that the soul is the part of a human that is eternal and exists independently of the body. While emotions and thoughts are expressions of the soul's experience in the body, they are not equivalent to the soul itself. Modern scientific perspective, the mind as the brain's function from a scientific standpoint. Thoughts, intelligence, emotions, and memories are considered to be functions of the brain. Neuroscience suggests that our consciousness arises from complex brain activity, and our memories and emotions are stored in different areas of the brain. However, modern science doesn't typically concern itself with the soul as a separate, immaterial entity. Answer: so, is the soul the same as our thoughts, intelligence, emotions, and memories? No, most traditions, both philosophical and religious, suggest that while the soul may interact with or encompass these aspects of our being, it is something deeper and more fundamental. The soul is typically understood as a transcendent or eternal aspect of our existence, something that outlasts our physical brain and body. In contrast, thoughts, emotions, and memories are seen as part of our mind and brain, integral to our earthly experience, but not the entirety of who we are at a spiritual level. In religious views, especially in Islam and Christianity, the soul, or spirit, is what gives life to the body and is the source of moral and spiritual awareness, distinct from the mental faculties that are tied to the brain. Chapter 5. My idea of rebirth through technology. Now that we've explored these different ideas about the self, let's return to my original idea. Here's what I've been thinking. Imagine a future where, through advanced technology, we could transfer the entire contents of a person's mind, memories, thoughts, emotions, everything, into a new, healthy body. This body could be a clone or a genetically engineered human, and it would be specifically designed to host a transferred consciousness. 1. A 20-year-old body with a 70-year-old mind. Picture this: you're 70 years old, and you've lived a full life. You've accumulated decades of experience, knowledge, and wisdom. But now, you're in a new, 20-year-old body, fresh and healthy. Your physical form is young, but your mind carries 70 years' worth of insight. You have the energy of youth, combined with the wisdom of age. It's like having a second chance at life, only this time, you're much better equipped. 2. Adapting to a new reality. There would be an adjustment period, of course. You would need time to adapt to the physicality of being young again while your mind still operates on the experiences of an older person. But the beauty of the human brain is that it's incredibly adaptable. This process, called neuroplasticity, allows the brain to adjust to new circumstances. So, in theory, a mind transferred into a younger body could adapt to its new physical reality relatively quickly. 3. Living again and again, creating a superhuman. Now, imagine doing this not just once, but over and over again. Every time your body grows old, you transfer your mind into a new, younger body. Over the course of multiple lifetimes, you would accumulate an incredible amount of knowledge, experience, and wisdom. You would, in effect, become a superhuman, someone who has lived through multiple eras, seen the rise and fall of civilizations, and experienced the world in ways no single person ever could. This is the ultimate vision of rebirth through technology. Chapter 6, The Ethical Dilemmas of Rebirth. But this idea also raises some serious ethical questions. For one, who gets to decide who is allowed to experience this kind of rebirth? Should this technology be available to everyone, or only to a select few? And if it's only available to a few, how do we decide who gets access? Wealth? Intelligence? Contribution to society? These are questions that need careful consideration before we take any steps toward making this a reality. 1. Who decides? One of the biggest concerns is fairness. If only the wealthy can afford to transfer their minds and live again, we risk creating a class of immortal elites who have an unfair advantage over everyone else. This could exacerbate social inequalities and create a world where the rich literally live forever while the poor are left behind. 2. Should anyone live forever? Philosophers like Martin Heidegger argued that death is an essential part of what makes us human. He believed that our awareness of mortality gives our lives meaning and shapes our choices. If we remove the possibility of death, do we also lose something fundamental about what it means to be human? Similarly, Friedrich Nietzsche warned about the dangers of the Übermensch, or overman, becoming detached from humanity's moral and ethical struggles. Living forever could potentially disconnect us from the very things that make life meaningful. Chapter 7, Conclusion, A Vision for the Future. So, here's where we are. I've laid out an idea, a vision for the future where we could live again through the transfer of our minds to new bodies. But with this vision comes many questions. Can we really transfer the self? Should we even try? And if we do, how do we ensure that it's done fairly and ethically? I don't have all the answers, but that's where you come in. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think this is possible? Would you want to live again? How do you think we can manage the ethical and social challenges this would bring? Closing remarks, call to action. If you found this idea as fascinating as I do, I invite you to join the conversation. Leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel for more discussions like this, and let's continue exploring the future of humanity, intelligence, and technology together.